Hi everyone, for our sixth grade Elevate groups. Today we are continuing work with fractions, but we are focused on identifying equivalent fractions with models. So our introduction lets us know that a rectangle can be divided into equal parts. So here we have three equal parts of 1/3, and one of those thirds is shaded. In our second model, we have 6 equal parts of 1/6, but then 2/6 are shaded, right? This is 1/6 plus another 1/6, giving us a total of 2/6. When we align both of these models right here, we see that 1/3 is actually equivalent to 2/6 because both fraction strips have the same amount. Here is another example of that. We have 1/2 and then we have 2/4. When we line up our fraction strips, they both have the same amount. So you are going to start with 5 minutes of a model for questions 1 through 4. The first question asks you, well, all 4 of these questions ask you whether the fractions are equivalent based on the model, right? And so for the first 2, the fraction strips are aligned. I first want you to ask students which 2 fractions are being compared in the model. So you can call on different students. A student should be able to say this is 1/4. Another student should be able to say 2/8. And then the second question I want you to ask is, how can the models be used to show equivalency? So from a visual standpoint, what we see is that when we align the fraction strips for 1/4 and 2/8, the shaded parts line up. So yes, they are equivalent. Whereas when we compare 1/4 and 1/5, the shaded portion does not align. We have a bit of a gap right here. Now the same is to be said about questions 3 and 4. 1/3 and 2/6 align, whereas 2/3 and 2/4, there's a bit of a gap. These do not align. So from there, students are going to work for about 10 minutes with a partner at a volume level 1 on the following questions. They are going to have to determine equivalency based on the models using ideologies we learned yesterday. But then for questions 7 and 8, they are going to have to find an equivalent fraction. Now, in their core blocks, students should already know how to create equivalent fractions, even equivalent ratios. So I don't anticipate that they will struggle. It is important, though, to know that their answers may vary, right? Depending on what they choose to multiply by the fraction that they started out with, right? 1/4 times 2/2 gives you 2/8. However, 1/4 times 3/3 gives you 3/12, right? So depending what they choose to multiply by, students may get different answers, and that's okay. So we're actually going to skip the next page and continuing practice on this page just for question 1 before launching students into their exit ticket for about 5 minutes. Students are having to identify the 2 fractions within a word problem that are being compared, and then based on the visual aid, determine whether those 2 fractions are equivalent. So they will get 1 point for modeling correctly and then another point for answering yes or no to whether the two fractions are equivalent.